Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News website. We've got a new guest, a new company to follow, and I'm very bullish on nickel and copper. Finding the reasons to be bullish are quite easy. I think it comes down to the revolution in automobiles with electrical vehicles. But what is much more difficult to find are good companies with good projects in nickel and copper. And in Murchison Minerals, we have found one. And I've got Troy Beausoleil on to talk about that. Troy, I hope I didn't mess your name up too much.
No, it's good. Hey, I appreciate the intro and appreciate being here with you today.
Well, I'm a truth machine guy. I like to watch what's happening with the drill rigs. And a couple of things that stood out to me in your recent news release was your XRF readings, 20 meters of 1.27% XRF estimate of nickel equivalent, or 3.78 copper equivalent. Included in that was 4.66 meters estimated at 2.93% nickel equivalent XRF and 8.72% copper equivalent. However you look at that, it's quite exciting. And Troy, why don't you start by, let's talk about the grade, but then let's talk about how XRFs are used in the business, how they're used, why they're used, and best practices on how to use them.
Absolutely. So, yeah, you captured the grade there well. I'll just summarize it with saying, high grade nickel bearing sulfide mineralization near surface. So that starts at about 29 meters downhole, and that was the target that was intended to extend the strike length of Bar-to-Fur, a known zone of nickel mineralization, and it did that. It extended the strike about 45 meters to the south. In parallel, this release had a drill hole drilled to the north, which was BDF 2208, which extended mineralization about 75 meters to the north, and the zone remains open. It remains unconstrained and open on strike, down dip, and the potential here is, we feel like we're at the very early stages of defining the potential that near surface high grade nickel mineralization near at Bar-to-Fur, and as an extension of that within HPM as a whole. But then just stepping back and addressing the XRF question, right? XRFs typically, they're becoming a very common tool and are a common tool in the exploration industry.
And especially for massive sulfide based metals, which they pick up very well.
They do. They pick up very well, and they're reliable instruments. You can calibrate them. When you handle your instrument with care, they have known accuracies. They have known precisions. What we did though was, you take the XRF as a tool, and then you really back out and you think about your sampling methodology, and that's the key for us. Is to really have a sound, systematic, standardized methodology to ensure that the results that you're getting from the field are unbiased.
And representative.
Unbiased and representative. And so what we did, what we have done is we purchased with a direct rock sampler, a DRS tool, and the direct rock sampler, Allan, is essentially an angle grinder with a apparatus on it to collect the cuttings from the core into a vial. And then we take the cuttings that are collected, we compress them into a puck, and then shoot them with the XRF. Okay, and what that does is we cut a line down the entire length of the drill core, for each representative sample interval. And so that is in a systematic way. So we have oriented core, which gives us the bottom line of the core. 180 degrees from that is where the cut line goes on every sample. Okay.
So there's no bias to your cutting.
Yeah. And you know, traditionally, if you think about XRF results, that would be one of the issues that you have to overcome and address is that bias in the sample methodology. And we feel that through this process that one starts with, you know, that unbiased sampling approach, then feeds forward into the, you know, analyzing each sample interval with the XRF on pucks with the XRF, and then we've inserted standards, blanks, duplicates, standard QA, QC procedures into our sampling process. So, you know, that's a long explanation to talk about results that we feel are solid, are representative of what we're seeing in core, and we're confident will correlate back to what we're seeing from the lab, because obviously every sample has been submitted to the lab for traditional analytical methodologies in the lab.
And again, I think it's important to, if you're careful with that device and you are sampling sulfides, it's pretty accurate, and I'm not concerned about that. And that's why I invited you guys on based on what I saw out of the XRF. Well, that and your core, that core you presented in your news release was quite impressive.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? Like you look at, you know, the core that we're seeing, the massive sulfide mineralization that we have intersected that exists at Barterford, it's pyrrhotite, pentlandite, and chalcopyrite. And some of the interesting features that we're seeing from a textural perspective would be those loop textures, loop sulfide textures, where you get the pentlandite and the chalcopyrite. So your nickel bearing minerals and your copper bearing minerals falling out in loop textures within that sulfide. And that indicates to us that this is a true magmatic sulfide system. We have subject matter experts, technical experts that are working with us on this project, developing this project. And, you know, those are textures that are commonly seen in producing jurisdictions. You look at textures like sulfide textures like this at Voisey's Bay, for instance.
Well, that's a good one to be mentioning. So that's and these magmatic events, volcanogenic massive sulfides, tend to occur in clusters and can get quite large. Let's talk about that part of the story.
Exactly. These are sulfides that are derived out of an intrusive complex, and significant intrusive complexes, differentiated mafic intrusive complexes, and that's the HPM project. Okay, so what we're seeing, what we understand, what we know about HPM is that there is a large-scale, broad mafic intrusive complex, differentiated mafic intrusive complex that has intruded into a package of rocks, a paranite sequence of rocks, call them, that have already have some of that primary sulfur in them. Okay, so and that is a key component where you have the intrusive coming into contact with country rocks that already have some sulfur in there. During that exchange process, you precipitate out sulfide mineralization, massive sulfide mineralization in the case of Barterford. And that's we feel that's at a property scale at HPM, which is why over the course of the last 12 months, we've increased our land package more than 5 times. So HPM right now is that's over a 650 square kilometer project. That has us bounding up what we feel is the most favorable land, the most prospective ground in the HPM area. And this is an area that has a high degree of outcrop. And so, you know, you're dealing with massive sulfides, or you're dealing with a sulfide system. That is the target, right? That has a high degree of outcrop. And so it lends itself to a very practical, very straightforward high probability exploration process, which starts with
And
VTEM.
cost effective. You can go out there and map things and sample things extensively.
Yeah, exactly. And so, our exploration process, we kicked off an exploration program this summer that contained three components. The first component was we had about 18% of the project as it sits now, covered by modern VTEM. So we flew a VTEM survey, excuse me, over the remaining portion of the project. And the EM response, you look for highly conductive targets, and those highly conductive targets to us represent the probability of having near surface sulfide mineralization. Okay. And then as a follow-up to that, the second component of the summer program was
by the way, if you want, Troy, you have the ability to use your share screen. If you wanted to bring some of that geophysics up while you're talking about it or you're sampling, feel free.
Yeah, I would maybe point I'd maybe point people to the last couple of releases. Within the last month, we released some of the results from our prospecting program. And so exploration process is starting with airborne geophysics, identifying targets. From there, we have the ability to get onto the ground, boots on the ground with a beat map, and a beat map simply maps out the conductivity on surface. So ground truths that conductivity that's being imaged in the airborne work.
And I'm looking at that map right now, and you've got a big hotspot there with a halo around it, and widespread distribution of mineralization, it looks like.
Yeah, exactly. And we have the ability to sample these things with a backpack drill, systematically assess and characterize, and then sequence our exploration program and have a pipeline of exploration targets beyond Bar de Fer. So where it starts with Bar de Fer, with the drilling process, expanding mineralization at Bar de Fer. Then we have a series of prospected exploration targets from there. And then outside of that, we have a significant number of EM targets that we still are planning to and have plans to get on the ground and prospect. And so it just follows
That's
that link.
pretty awesome that you can go in there with a backpack drill really inexpensively and poke some of those small holes in looking for sulfides.
Yeah, that's right. And this summer's prospecting program was very successful in identifying a number of new occurrences of sulfide mineralization at surface. And hey, when you're talking about magmatic sulfide systems, they don't always express themselves on surface. They have extremely deep roots. These are intrusive complexes that come from depth, right? And so when you're seeing that degree of mineralization on surface, coupled with the grades that we're seeing at Bar de Fer, with the right geology in the right area, it has us very, very excited about HPM having the potential to become an emerging nickel jurisdiction in Canada at a camp and district scale.
So when you look at that geophysical map there, I noticed you hit a hole DDF 22-10, and it's sort of right in the middle of that big high, and it also had a thick intersection of mineralization.
So there's the exploration on the property. Okay, if you look at HPM as a whole, that goes back to first pass regional reconnaissance scale exploration, started in the late 90s and into the early 2000s, and this was a Falcon Bridge project at that point in time. You follow that forward and you follow the nickel space, and in the early 2000s, price of nickel collapses, etc. And a lot of these projects came up for option, etc. And that's where our predecessor company, Nickel-Copper-Cobalt Minerals, entered into the equation in partnership with a company called Pure Nickel. And in 2007, 2008, started an exploration program, put some additional work into the project, did some geophysics and a drill campaign primarily focused at Bar-to-Fur.
Mhm.
And then Allan, then the global financial crisis happened in 2008, and the appetite for exploration at that time dwindled, and as a result, the Manicouagan, our predecessor company, went dormant for a period. Following on that, our current chairman, JC Potman, came in and through an RTO, created Murchison Minerals in 2013. And then the project was into a 50-50 joint venture, and essentially sat until Murchison acquired 100% interest in the project in 2019. And from that point, from 2019 until today, we have built the land position back up to have a strategic and dominant land position in the area. We have advanced the project significantly through the acquisition of property-wide VTEM surveys. And we have prospected, and we have also compiled and understood the previous results that were never truly understood. And as a function of doing that, we defined Bar-to-Fur, which has a strike length of 315 meters, a depth extent of about 295 meters, and a width of about 150 meters. And it comes to surface. It comes right to surface. Previously, there was about 5,500 meters of drilling into it. And so that gave us a clear path forward this summer as to what to do. It was to expand that known zone of mineralization at Bar-to-Fur. And we've done that. We've expanded it on strike. We've expanded it at depth. It remains open. It remains unconstrained. And, to your point, this is on a project where there has been very, very little drilling done outside of Bar-to-Fur and these areas. And the prospecting results we have to date have us highly encouraged. And, so we're looking at a situation right now of being able to leverage some of that past work that has been done. We have the data spacing now required to move into a resource estimation stage at Bar-to-Fur, while at the same time continuing to advance and test our highest probability exploration targets that are de-risked through that prospecting process. So I really like where we're at on this project.
Well, a lot of times I think that companies are in too big of a hurry to get to the resource stage. But in the case where it comes right to surface, I think that makes it a special situation. And secondly, the big reason is I think sometimes it can put a cap on what people believe can be there. And if you're open in all directions, sometimes I think that is a bit of a disservice, because you cap the project in people's minds. And but when you've got something that is right at surface, starting to show that, okay, well, this is what we're looking at surface, it's something that can go through that development discount window quite quickly.
Yeah, hey, that's absolutely a component of it, Allan. And the other aspect is we're working to demonstrate that HPM is an emerging nickel jurisdiction. Having results like we have at Bar-to-Fur, having drill results like we've had this summer. We talked about the 10th hole. You go back to the second hole on the program this year, and the second hole intersected 121 meters of nickel-bearing sulfide mineralization, which is an incredible intersection, and that was at an average grade of 1.39%.
Wow.
You look at some of the sub-intervals within that, and that you look at 28 meters of mineralization over 3% nickel equivalent, or in the terms of copper equivalent, that's over 9%. 21 meters at 3.45% or 10.26% copper equivalent. Significant drill intersections at Bar-to-Fur from this program. And if this was in the shadow of an existing camp, there would be a clear line of sight for this.
Mhm.
Where we're at right now is our position is this is demonstratable through a maiden resource, and then using the maiden resource as a platform to continue to leverage the extremely favorable geology that we have, the prospective terrain that we have, and continue to advance this project, and build tons from there.
Well, and you've also got the ability, because it's at surface and it outcrops, you can rapidly move forward with it. Sometimes if you run a resource on something, they will wait a year before you have more indications of it getting a lot bigger. You guys can pound away at that quite easily and develop or move it forward rapidly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's at Bar-Defer itself, continuing to expand Bar-Defer through future drill programs. As I mentioned, it's unconstrained. It remains unconstrained on strike, unconstrained down dip. And then directly adjacent to that, we have an exploration target called Sierra. And I think that's the one you were referencing earlier. And Sierra has a strike length now, as defined by surface prospecting, of about 775 meters. Similar EM signature to Bar-Defer.
Sitting right on top of a geophysical anomaly that follows it.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's our path forward here. It's continuing to use that systematic approach to exploration, continuing to deliver on results as a function of our plan. We have a technical group together, that with our in-house technical staff and augmented by subject matter experts, as technical advisors, that put the geoscience out in front of the spend, and it is de-risking the process from an early stage, and then as a result, we're able to return results like this. We had the objective of doing exactly what we delivered on this summer.
That's a great way to excite those funds in Quebec. They are very technically adept, and when you can bring them some strong science and a clear path forward, they tend to open up their checkbooks.
Yeah, hey, Quebec in general, Quebec is a phenomenal mining jurisdiction. It's a phenomenal business jurisdiction in terms of doing exploration. We've had the support from some of the funds that you mentioned in our last number of rounds of financing, and support from the broader investment community in Quebec as well. One of our strategic investors is Mr. Michael Gentile out of Montreal. He has just under 10% of the company, came in last year at this time in a financing, participated again this spring, and is directly aligned with us on the results coming out of HPM. So it has us, where we feel we're in a very strong position to move this project forward.
Well, I like Quebec. I've only ever featured a few companies in my reports. One was Virginia Gold, Andre Gaumont's company, and the other one was Osisko when they were about $1 stock. So yeah. Quebec has treated me very well, and I'm always glad to hear a good story coming out of Quebec. And you guys got a heck of a good one there with nickel and copper.
Yeah, no, we feel the exact same way, and one of the things Quebec has done so well over the years is not only have a business climate that is conducive to exploration and to advancing projects forward, but also made investments in infrastructure. And you look at where the HPM project is located. It's within kilometers of a highway. There's a rail line that goes through the project. So a heavy rail line that goes through the project down to deepwater ports on the North Shore of the St. Lawrence. It's within kilometers of a hydroelectric power facility that has about a 50 megawatt capacity that is in turn then tied into the Manic complex of hydro facilities to the south, which are just astonishing pieces of infrastructure. You drive by Manic 5 and it's an amazing hydroelectric dam. So it's the line of sight is there, from where we're at to develop, having the potential to develop a project in Quebec that's looking at commodities that fully support that transition into a low carbon future environment in the battery metal space, which you mentioned, with the support of low cost hydroelectricity, et cetera. And so I speak to that because those are the fundamentals that I look at when I'm looking at a project, and it decreases the hurdle rate for projects moving forward, et cetera. And so those pieces are there. And again, just the foundational layers starting to stack up and build up that continue to have us really excited about moving this thing forward.
Yeah, Quebec is just tremendous when it comes to being a mining-friendly jurisdiction. And as you said, I mean, they are putting money into infrastructure that opens up areas, I think it's Nord Quebec, or I can't remember the name of it, but that opened up the potential for diamond mines up there. It's other mines, not many places in the world do you get that kind of support for mining.
No, that's right. And I think you look across Canada, and Canada as a whole is a good mining jurisdiction. The areas I look at in Canada that would be, we have projects in Saskatchewan and in Quebec, and those are two of the best jurisdictions in Canada, in my opinion.
And me being Cree and knowing the Cree community out there in Quebec, how has things been reaching out and consulting with the First Nations?
Yeah, our belief as a company and our vision as a company is that resource development exploration projects go through are meaningfully done with active and meaningful participation and involvement with Indigenous communities. I had the opportunity prior to Murchison to do very meaningful work in that regard on a project in Saskatchewan. And it's a fundamental and core belief of Murchison and us as a company is broad scale active participation and partnership at various stages, at every stage, right from whether it's employment and business opportunities, whether it's engagement, whether it's a regulatory process, and foundationally just building relationships and aligning interests at an early stage. And that's what we're committed to at Murchison, and that's what we'll continue to move towards and build towards at HPM.
Well, before I became a person who does research and reporting on companies, I worked in the mining business since 1993 as a consultant. And some of the work that I did is on permitting in Indigenous communities. And there's sort of three pillars that I think are important. Those are respect, consultation, and inclusion. And I think if you do those things, you're not going to have a lot of problems working with Indigenous groups.
And that's fundamentally where I couldn't agree with you more. And throughout my career, I've spent a significant amount of time, as I mentioned, on the proponent side, doing just that work, and very, very proud of the work that I was able to accomplish in the past, and really mutually beneficial outcomes as a function of that work. And that's core to our values and core to our belief system at Murchison.
Another thing that I really believe in when it comes to Indigenous people is that I tell the story of my great grandfather, who had a trap line for 50 years or something like that. And if you ever had taken a piece of rock to him and said, "Have you seen anything like this?" he'd be able to walk you to exactly where he had seen, if he had seen something like that. So I think there's an inherent ability in the Indigenous community for prospecting and exploration. And I hope you guys are doing some of that, because I think you got some great tools and assistants out there that would be good at old-fashioned geology, walking around and looking down.
Yeah, hey, I agree with you, and I think that from that perspective, you can extend that through, right? And you look at it, right from maybe a geology and prospecting perspective, but certainly as you move forward and you start to think about environmental baseline characterization, and inclusion of Indigenous knowledge into various aspects of project development, and it's it's core to our belief here. It's core to our values at Murchison, and I think that you look at it from that perspective, and you start to talk about opportunities, right? And you start to
Absolutely.
talk about opportunities as opposed to risk.
Absolutely. Well, good on you. And before we close, Troy, I'd like to talk a little bit about what's pending and where you're going in the near term. Investors always like to hear that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the very near term, what we have coming up is we're able to communicate results through the PXRF process. Obviously, all of those samples are at the lab. We will be compiling those assay results as they come back from the lab and communicating them out. All of this is leading into that workflow that we talked about, which is moving forward with the objective of defining Bar-to-Fur through a resource estimation phase. So that's in the near term. That's what to look for. And subsequent to that, obviously, it'll be a continuation of the exploration process and of the exploration program at HPM with boots on the ground in the field.
And what's the seasons like there? Are you able to drill pretty much year round, especially with those little backpack drills?
Yeah, with the backpack drills, obviously that's best done in the summer months. Historically, there has been drilling year round on the HPM project, and right now we're in the process of hey, it's more optimally done in the spring and summer months at HPM just because of the snowpack, and some of those factors. However, as the project progresses, it certainly has the potential and ability to be a year-round project.
So you've got your summer program, you did a bunch of drilling, you're waiting on more assay results from that. You're planning on doing a resource calculation, and I guess you'll compile all that data and then get back to drilling. Is that the idea?
That's the idea. Again, it's putting the technical out in front of the spend. So you do a round of work, we're getting across the technical, increasing our understanding in all areas of the project, building up a exploration plan based off that technical assessment. In parallel to that, you're absolutely right. It's moving forward with that resource estimate, and then it's executing that expansion plan coming out of the results that we have this year.
And what's your cash position like at this point in time?
Yeah, we're sitting good. We came out of the program. Right now we're at about $4 million.
$4 million after the program.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well done. And there you have a captive audience there in the institutions in Quebec. A lot of them are run by geologists, and they really like their science out there. So you can throw a lot of important data at them that will be paid attention to. That's not always the case with some of this kind of work you're doing, but you would definitely have a captive audience out there in those institutions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We as with our general shareholder base, we keep everyone updated and informed. And I can tell you that the groups that we're involved with are excited about where we're at.
I bet they are. Well, looking at valuations, you've got an $18.5 million valuation. About 20% of that is in cash.
Yeah.
That's a pretty nice situation for an exploration company, Troy.
Yeah, it is. And, I look at where we're at with the work that we have coming out and the results that we have coming out. And then the fundamentals in the nickel space, where and where we're at, or where I believe, and I think I just share the view of a lot of people where we believe we're at in this stage of the cycle. And hey, it's going to be an exciting few months here, few years here as we continue to move this project forward.
That's without a doubt, because if you look at the pipeline of exploration projects, development projects, mines out there for nickel and copper, and then you look at the needs from the electrification of everything, and there's just not enough in the pipeline from exploration through to mining to meet those demands. So I can only see a very bullish argument for nickel and copper going forward.
Absolutely. And that's in the overall nickel market. When you look at projects in the overall projections from a demand side in the nickel space, looking at the IEA projecting out 100% increase in the demand for nickel. That's full stop. That's not even subdividing it down into class 1 nickel products. You look at class 1 nickel, and the IEA projects, a 600% increase, which is phenomenal, right? And that comes back to the type of deposit you have, and nickel sulfide deposits being the primary input into class 1 nickel products, which feeds into that EV sector. And as you said, you look around and there needs to be a significant number of projects advance through that exploration stage and into the development pipeline and into operations in order to meet that demand that's projected. And so
well, it looks like your timing is pretty ideal to be coming out with a good exploration story with lots of sweet looking sulfides and grade in it.
Yeah. Hey, I'm very proud of the team, of the technical work that went into this for the summer program, into the setup, and into the execution. The results that we have are very strong, and the guys are queued right in. The team's queued up to continue to drive this thing forward.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to close it off. Did you have any closing statements before we close, Troy?
No, I think that's it. Hey, we covered a lot today. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of our recent results, where we're at, what Murchison's focused on, and hey, we're excited about the future.
As you should be. As you should be, Troy. Thank you. And I'll close it off now and we can have a chat at the other end. So there you go, folks. I started out by saying that, I'm very bullish on nickel and copper. And a lot of that has to do with the demand that's coming. But equally as important is the supply story. And there's just not enough exploration plays out there focused on nickel and copper. And these guys have a very excellent looking project that looks like it could have size, and they've got the potential to find more than one. I think they got a heck of a story. And then you look at the valuation, as I mentioned just recently, with $18.5 million valuation with $4 million in cash. They got like 20% of their valuation is in cash. So when you look at the market in general for junior mining companies, it hasn't been very good of late. But I think that is about to change. I think that these companies are just drastically undervalued, and I'm always happy when I can find one to bring to the viewers, and have a great guy like Troy to talk about it with. And I really think they're doing some great things out there in Quebec. So as always, my shows are for information purposes only. It's important to speak with your financial advisors and do your homework. And really, when it comes to doing your homework, I think this is a good place to start. But then go on their website, look at their news releases, look at the grades, look at the distribution of their nickel and copper, look at their corporate presentation, look at their geophysics, and I think you'll see why I'm happy to find this company when they have such a reasonable valuation and the catalysts to unlock that shareholder value. So on that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.